Welcome to the EXP Group's discussion of ACCA paper P5, Advanced Performance Management. Before we get started, we would like to suggest that candidates for this paper download the EXP Group's Express Notes, and we will discuss a few of the key topics connected to this paper. Now, the content of the paper is pretty much summarized in Chapter 1, Strategic Planning and Control. Just to mention, the main idea here is to elevate the discipline of management accounting to one of to the senior decision-making levels in a corporation. In other words, the management accountant is not simply somebody who is working with numbers and doing cost accounting exercises, but is actually participating in the direction of companies at the most senior levels from a strategic point of view. And that's the theme we need to weave in to the topic as we go through the subjects here. Before we move into Chapter 1 itself, the candidate should read through the introduction about Express Notes, how they're structured and what they are intended to achieve. This is not a substitute for all the time and learning and practice that's necessary to prepare for the exam, so please keep that in mind. But this is basically a summary of the P5 syllabus. If we start at the most senior level in a company, we should think about how strategy is created. And basically, Chapter 1 is trying to capture the idea that strategic planning is really a process that has to be institutionalized within a company. People have to think in strategic terms and to follow a series of steps in order to come up with the most appropriate strategies. Now, if we need a definition, we can say strategy is a plan of action designed to achieve a particular goal. Now, that may seem very general and almost banal, but the key word there is, or the orientation point is, we want to move towards a goal. So the question is going to be, okay, what are the goals of the company? And that's perhaps something that needs to be addressed first. In other words, if a company is going to choose a strategy or adopt a strategy, it has to understand in what direction it wants to move in the long term, where it's going. There has to be some kind of destination in order to be able to create the road map. Now, let's just go through some of the concepts of the components of strategy making. One is to look at strategy as it is pursued at different levels of the organization. Candidates will remember from earlier ACCA papers Anthony's hierarchy, which is basically this pyramidal structure. And we can see that corporate strategy is the overall sort of most senior view. What type of businesses should the company be in? So it's very much forward-looking, but long-term forward-looking. Business strategy is sort of further down in the scale of things, but is concerned with the strategy of a single business organization, or something we can call strategic business units, SBUs. So while the SBU strategy is subordinate to the corporate level strategy, it is also a process that has to be followed in order to determine what is the best roadmap for the particular business to achieve its goals or corporate objectives. Finally, we have at the functional or operational level, the kind of strategies that one can talk about at this level will be marketing strategy, HR strategy, so human resources, IT systems strategy. In other words, there has to be some kind of blueprint as to what the systems development contains over the medium term for a business, and that has to be linked in and closely coordinated with the other strategies at the functional level, which add up to a coherent business strategy, and then the various businesses that the company pursues have to add up to an overall corporate strategy. So we can see the hierarchy at work. If we move along now to a model described by Johnson and Scholes about strategic planning, they specify 3 steps in the process. One is analysis of strategic possibilities, different strategies. This is looking, surveying, and coming up with different scenarios and different possibilities the company could pursue. Secondly is making the choice, very important, because one has to have a clear view as to what the preferred strategy is going to be and what is going to be actually and ultimately implemented. So the third stage is moving to action. We can see that there are interrelationships between all of these as well. Johnson and Scholes go further in discussing the evaluation of strategic options, and they specify here 3 criteria in terms of evaluation, and we just want to look at them and distinguish them for a moment. One is the suitability of an option, of a strategic choice. The question here simply is, would it help? In other words, is the strategy that's being proposed a relevant or a solution to a relevant question, let's put it that way. Or does it fit in with the strategic position of the organization? That's this notion of suitability. Feasible is, would it actually work, and does it actually meet the criteria that we have for financial feasibility? Is it going to be profitable? Is it actually a practical and workable solution? So suitability, feasibility, and third, acceptability is understood from the standpoint of the relevant stakeholders. Is the project acceptable to what the company is all about? And will it pass the scrutinizing eye of stakeholders? Okay, so those are more or less largely qualitative issues that we're looking at here. Feasibility as well. When we say feasible, we would want to understand it in terms of not only quantitative financial feasibility, but do we have the resources and managerial skills necessary to actually implement it? A company that makes toothpicks would not easily be able to adopt a strategy of building nuclear power plants because it simply would not be feasible or suitable for that matter. So we can see that there are some subtle distinctions to be made here when we look at Johnson and Scholes and the criteria. As we go through paper P5, we also have to keep in mind that there are, of course, financial implications arising out of the strategic choices that are made, and therefore all previous knowledge in other papers is assumed knowledge when we get to paper P5, including, of course, our famous and beloved SWOT analysis, which requires no particular discussion here. This is clearly assumed knowledge as well as a model of analysis.